2012, the year that the Avengers hit the movie theaters, and 12-year-old boys and lesbians alike throughout the nation had one thing on their mind. Women, or wait, no, superheroes. I, like many people, watched the Avengers at the age of 12 and immediately became obsessed with, for some reason, the Hulk and also Hawkeye. It wouldn't be until 2015 when I turned on Netflix as I was staying home sick from school when I discovered my favorite superhero of all time, Daredevil. And if you're thinking to yourself, Eva, you usually talk about disability content, why are you talking about a superhero TV show? Bear with me. Daredevil's blind, so this technically fits in with my regular content. 10 years later, and I'm still pretty much there in terms of being obsessed with Daredevil. So it's safe to say that in 2018, when the show was canceled after its most successful season, I cried myself to sleep every day for a week. But fear not. After literally 7 years of campaigning for the return of Daredevil in 2021, Daredevil returned to the screen in Spider-Man No Way Home. So what did I do? Immediately become hyperfixated on Daredevil again, as severely as I possibly could. But it wouldn't be until 2025 that Daredevil Born Again, the show that reintroduced the world to Daredevil, would come out. So let's talk about it. I spent years dreaming about this show and looking forward to this show. So I have a lot of opinions about it. Some are good, some are okay, and some are straight up dumpster fire. The good, the okay, and the straight up dumpster fire of Daredevil Born Again. Starting with the straight up dumpster fire, we have the pre-overhaul. If you watched Daredevil Born Again and you thought to yourself, why does this kind of feel like two shows just kind of got jammed into one? That's because that's exactly what happened. So basically, the original creators of Daredevil Born Again, the writers and the directors of the show, these two guys, they wrote this 9-episode series and they started filming it with original actors Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio returning. However, they didn't bring anyone else back at all. They wanted to bring back the Punisher, John Bernthal, but he originally said no because of how bad it was. Thank God the actors' strike happened, because that's when Kevin Feige sat down and actually watched some of the footage they'd shot and said, we need to scrap this and start over. But they had already spent so much money and put so much time into filming 6 whole episodes that they couldn't just scrap it and start over. They had to kind of recover what they had done. In the original script, Foggy was killed off-screen, and Karen wasn't even mentioned. The 2 main supporting characters from the original show, and the original guys just said, you know what, fuck it, we don't need them. So thankfully, the new guys took over. I'll put their names on the screen because, Justin and Bonehead. These new guys were given 6 fully shot episodes, and they were given the freedom to do whatever they wanted, but they only had 2.5 episodes that they could do themselves. They brought Karen back, they brought Foggy back, but they couldn't just scrap him being dead, Foggy being killed, because it was essential to the 6 episodes that had already been shot. That leads me into the second dumpster fire plot point, Foggy dying. I held on hope until the very last second of the finale that Foggy would be revealed to be alive. And you know what? I'm still holding on hope, but a lot less hope. Foggy is a legacy character at Marvel. And yes, Marvel is not afraid of killing characters, especially Daredevil is not afraid of killing legacy characters. They did it to Ben Urich in the first season of Daredevil. But killing Foggy as the starting point of the new series, it felt like a slap in the face to Foggy fans everywhere. Especially considering they gave us so many hints that he'd be alive. There was no tribute to Foggy Nelson. Not really. I mean, originally he wasn't even going to be shown. They weren't going to bring Eldon Henson back. Look, I'll always be mad about Foggy being killed, even if it was the whole plot of the first season of Born Again. I'll always think it was a bad idea. They should have given Eldon Henson the opportunity to give us a little more Foggy Nelson. If they were going to kill him off, okay, I understand that. I can understand that happening. But don't just give us one scene with him. You know, it felt cheap. It felt like a slap in the face to Foggy Nelson fans. And if we're talking about Matt Murdock in the comics, this man has gone to hell and back, literally, to save Foggy. So Matt Murdock just kind of continuing on with life and being successful. I didn't buy it. I just didn't buy it. The third dumpster fire critique I have is the lighting, the cinematography in general. The original show had some of the best cinematography and lighting I've ever seen in any show. Yes, sometimes it was literally too dark to see the screen, but holy shit, was there some beautiful cinematography in that show. Daredevil Born Again kind of had the aesthetic of like a gray millennial apartment, which is exactly the apartment Matt Murdock lives in now. Well, it exploded, but before. Another thing was the lack of one-shot hallway fight take scene. I know it's probably the hardest thing you could ever do in terms of filming a show, is doing some 13-minute one-take hallway scene. But after 3 seasons of hallway fight scenes that just got better, and season 2 better, season 3, even if it was a short one, even just an homage to the original series, I would have loved that. Moving on to the okay, we have the side characters of Daredevil Born Again. In the original show, I would argue that every single side character brought something to the story that genuinely stuck with you. Even Mrs. Cardenas had something so special about her. Brett Mahoney, Karen Page. I know she's technically in Born Again, but not long enough. Ben Urich, Wesley. There wasn't a single side character I disliked. However, in Born Again, I'm putting side characters in general in the okay category because there were some that I did like. Daniel, for example, I ended up really enjoying Daniel's character. BB, really enjoyed BB's character. Josie, bringing Josie back was, I think, the smartest thing Born Again did. But then there were characters like Cherry. I have spent a lot of time shitting on Cherry on Twitter, but it wasn't exactly always serious. However, he was in no way enjoyable as a character. He was boring. He was just... I tweeted once that he was everything bad about Foggy Nelson and none of the good. He was a character that we were supposed to feel like we knew, but we'd never met him before. We met him in Born Again. It was like they replaced Foggy and Brett Mahoney with the same boring bald man. He's not bald in a Wilson Fisk way. He's bald in a way that makes me dislike him more. Is that offensive? And then there's also Heather. Oh, Heather. Heather's not necessarily supposed to be the most likable character. I mean, she literally joins Fisk at the end. But man, was it hard to like her. Every time Matt said, "Please just believe me," and Heather said, "You're crazy," like, yes, she was justified in most of the ways she felt about Matt, but I still just couldn't fully get behind her character. Another side character I did enjoy was Kirsten, but that has less to do with how she actually behaved in Born Again and more to do with the fact that she's my favorite comic book character. Kirsten McDuffie, World Domination, Endgame with Matt Murdock. I believe it. I see it. The plot. It's kind of hard to just put the plot in general in one category, but I can't necessarily say the plot was good, and I can't necessarily say the plot was dumpster fire. The plot was okay. There were times where it was weak, and there were times when it was strong. There were times where it was cluttered and weirdly paced, but overall, it was mostly okay. Do I think there needed to be a bank heist in the middle of a 9-episode series? No, I don't. Did I enjoy the bank heist? Yeah, I did. I love seeing Matt Murdock in situations like that. He's my favorite character of all time. Of course I want to see him in a bank heist. But not when there's only 9 episodes. Not when we had 9 episodes to establish a plot that went so many different directions. Because during that bank heist, Muse was killing people. You know? And speaking of Muse. Honestly, I'm debating putting Muse in the dumpster fire section, but I did like aspects of Muse. They incorporated Muse visually into the show straight out of the comics, but then took everything that was cool about him from the comics and just kind of tossed that out the window. Instead of being this, like, snarky badass, he was like this loner, privileged, severely mentally troubled young adult? However old he is. And also, the build-up to Muse was so much better than the finale of Muse. The thing about Muse is that he could have been really cool, and they decided to make him boring. And it's like, how do you make someone who drains people's blood to use that on murals? How do you make that boring? How do you fuck that up? Muse for me is definitely leaning more towards the dumpster fire than the good, but I'll put him in the okay. Now I need to think of what to say next. Next up on my okay list, I'm just gonna say disability. Representation. I'm putting this in the okay section because, much like the side characters, there were aspects I enjoyed and there are aspects I didn't enjoy so much. I enjoyed very much so that they showed that Matt Murdock experiences ableism a lot. People are super ableist to him all the time, and that's exactly what I would expect. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, so if you don't know, oops, I'm trying to show my wheelchair. My opinions about people being ableist to him are this way because I experience a lot of ableism from people online and from people in real life, like literally coming up to me and saying ableist things to me. So yeah, a big-time lawyer in the position that Matt Murdock is in, who's, you know, made a lot of enemies in his time, it absolutely makes sense that he would experience the kind of ableism that they show. And this is something that they barely showed in the original show. There was one scene in the first episode of Daredevil where that one cop says, "I don't care if you're blind, I'll beat the shit out of you," or whatever he says. That's literally the only time I can think of, except for maybe Agent Nadine being like slightly patronizing to him in the 3rd season, being like, how can a blind man be missing, you know? But even then, that was like very low tier stuff. So there was some high tier ableism in Daredevil Born Again, and I loved to see it. Obviously, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. Obviously, you're supposed to be like, that person's a dickhead for saying that. But that's reality. That is reality for disabled people. That is how people treat us. So I loved it. The parts I didn't like as much. So the scene where where Matt Murdock goes to Muse's hideout and feels the painting of Heather, and that's how he knows that Muse has Heather, that was probably the least believable thing in the show for me. I think it would have made so much more sense for him to, you know, smell Heather's book that Muse bought from her, or even for him to not know that was Heather, and for the audience to know it was Heather, and for him to have to find Heather a different way. That to me would have been so much more interesting and believable than him being able to feel that it was a painting of her. I know there's texture to paintings, and I saw this argument on Twitter a lot. I was involved in it, so I've seen all the sides of it, and I still stand by the fact that I don't think it was believable. There were a couple times, like in the finale, when Frank handed over the bullet with the Punisher logo on it to Matt and said, "Hey, this is your guy," and Matt was like, "Yeah, it is." In that moment, I'm like, okay, I think he's just believing that it's the bullet because Frank is saying it is. But he didn't explicitly say it. But also him feeling the logo on the bullet is still a little bit like, I also hated that they made a kind of a reference to the world on fire. I was really hoping they'd scrap that. Most people in the Daredevil fandom hated the world on fire bit from the first season. And Karen, in the last episode, asks Matt something along the lines of, how do you live in all that darkness? And Matt said, it's not dark, it's like 1,000 suns or whatever. That kind of felt like, to me, it was a reference to the World on Fire bit. And man, I just hate the World on Fire bit. It did irreparable damage to how people understand how Matt Murdock sees. Truly, because some people watched Daredevil and thought, oh, so he literally sees through his eyes. That's what he sees, which is not at all the case. They meant that's what he pictures in his mind because of the senses, his other input of senses. That's what he sees in his mind. Meanwhile, his eyes are useless, obviously. Tons of people, especially casual viewers of Daredevil, watched that scene and said, oh, so his eyes do work, just not well. And that's not, whatever. So I like the reference to that. I was like, if that was a reference to that, I was just really hoping they'd get rid of it. And I was really hoping they would go down the comic book route of the radar vision, the way that it's depicted in the comics. I love the way it's depicted in the comics, and I wish we could get a adaptation of that. The best adaptation that I've seen was the 2003 Daredevil movie. Even then, it wasn't perfect. So overall, that's why I put the disability representation in the okay category, because to me, I mean, this is just my opinion, but it wasn't perfect, but it also wasn't horrible, and it could have been worse. So, yeah. Okay, finally, let's talk about the frickin' good, because as much as I have opinions about this show, overall, I really enjoyed it. I watched every episode on time, and I live tweeted about it. So starting off strong, Matt Murdock. Matt Murdock was the best part of the show for me. But, I mean, he's my favorite character of all time. You could probably put Matt Murdock in the worst show of all time, and I would still watch it. God knows I loved She-Hulk, so, you know, say what you will about me. From the get-go, Matt Murdock in Daredevil Born Again felt like a different Matt Murdock to me, which is crazy because it's Charlie Cox, and how can Charlie Cox play Daredevil that much differently only 7 years later? But I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that this was Matt Murdock without Foggy. Matt Murdock without Foggy is a different person. He has to be. In order to live, truly, I think he just had to become a different person. So his characterization of Matt Murdock is my favorite characterization of Matt Murdock I've ever seen in Daredevil Born Again. I love how sassy he is. I love his confidence. It is giving Wade Daredevil, and Wade is my favorite comic run ever. So I'm a Kirsten fan, so obviously I love Wade. Something in the original Daredevil that Charlie Cox's Daredevil lacked to me was the confidence. And I think a lot of that had to do with Charlie Cox being a not new, but pretty fresh actor on the scene, getting this huge role. And Charlie Cox himself is a very humble person, or at least he acts like he is. This Matt Murdock did not shy away from being cocky. And that is an aspect of Matt Murdock that, again, I just think was lacking in the original. So it was really great to see his flourishing confidence and cockiness as Matt Murdock gets older. You know, he's 40 now, or I guess he's supposed to be 40? I don't know. He's probably 40. He's a different person. He has 5 different versions of his Daredevil suit. This is a different Matt Murdock. And honestly, 10 out of 10 in terms of Charlie Cox's performance. There was only a couple of times where he pronounced some words Britishly, but, you know, he was out of the game for a while, so can't really blame him too much. Moving on from Matt Murdock, but we might get back to him, ended up being one of my favorite parts of the show was Wilson Fisk. In the beginning of the show, I was like, okay, so we're going full throttle Wilson Fisk. He is in this show. Not as a side character, but yeah. I mean, obviously from the marketing, it was pretty obvious that he was the secondary character, and he truly is. But by the end of it, I totally was there. I totally bought it. He convinces even Vanessa that he's a different person in the beginning of the show, and he convinced me too a little bit. There was an aspect of him that made me actually think, did his time away from Matt Murdock, did his time with Echo and in Hawkeye, did that really change his character? But by the end of it, no, of course not. This is Kingpin. This is a guy that can crush a man's skull with his bare hands. And boy, did they show that. Wilson Fisk was everything he's supposed to be in this show. He was big, he was loud, he was in control of everyone and everything, to the point that you feel guilty for the characters he's manipulating. You genuinely want to see Daniel succeed, even though he is being manipulated and corrupted by this horrible mob boss. You see it with Sheila, too, who obviously by the end of the show decides that she needs to save herself. And for that to happen, that means she had to literally give away the commissioner, the police commissioner, to Wilson Fisk. She had to do that in order to save herself. That just shows how corrupt this Wilson Fisk is. People are saying that season 2 New York is different than any other New York we've ever seen, and I believe that, because by the end of season 1, Wilson Fisk has his hands in everyone's business, and he's winning, and everyone knows it. So there was a part of me that was like, oh, so we're doing Wilson Fisk again. But now I am really all for it. I think that he should remain a huge, powerful character in the MCU, and going beyond Matt Murdock, I can see him being Spider-Man's, maybe in the 5th Spider-Man movie, Kingpin will be Spider-Man's villain. With how big he's getting, both figuratively and literally, this is Wilson Fisk at the beginning of what is going to be maybe one of the best villain superhero stories on screen of all time. And I am definitely looking forward to more of him. Thirdly, the good. You know I'm going to talk about Karen Page. I would put Karen Page in the okay category if there was slightly less of her, but thankfully the finale gave me a good amount of Karen Page. When I found out she was only going to be in 2 episodes, it broke my heart, because she is my favorite character, truly, next to Matt Murdock, of course. Karen Page is my number 1. I love Karen Page. I loved her in the original show. I loved her in Born Again. To me, she is a character that came from the comics not being a legacy character, but because of her presence in the MCU, is now a legacy character. While I don't necessarily like that they're hinting at another romance with Karen and Matt, and that's mostly just because they're bad for each other. I mean, we saw it in season 2. They're horrible for each other, and also Karen has feelings for Frank. We know Karen has feelings for Frank. Also, Matt has feelings for Frank, obviously. And if they do a triangle, a love triangle with them, I want Matt to be the center of that love triangle, and Frank and Karen pining for him. I'm kidding. That's a joke. I'd definitely rather see Karen with Frank than Karen with Matt. And I think they'll get there eventually, because I think Karen and Matt are going to find out once again that they are horrible for each other and much better as friends. Which leads me into the next. Frank Castle. I loved Frank in Born Again. I think there was just enough Frank Castle in Born Again. I think he didn't need to be this huge character. I think they balanced him well with the plot. I loved their interaction in the Midway episode. I loved him calling Matt out. I loved him calling Matt blind boy as an insult. That was just like, Frank, what? That was so Frank coded. When he popped those pills and just started crunching them, like, oh my god, that's Frank Castle. Absolutely adored the fact that he shot the mother-loving fuck out of every single cop wearing his logo. Because, man, those corrupt cops. Whew. I love to see a guy shooting cops. I love that Karen called Frank to protect Matt. Good shit. And then we have Poindexter. Honestly, I could have done with a little more Poindexter. I thought he was going to be in the finale more than he was. I really enjoyed him in episode 8. Wilson Bethel is a phenomenal actor. I absolutely love his portrayal of Benjamin Poindexter. I know he's in season 2. I'm really excited to see what he does in season 2. Another character I super adored was Vanessa. I can't believe they were going to recast her. Originally, they were just going to recast her, which would have done horrible damage to the canon of the original show. I was very happy that they did end up bringing the same actress back, because her portrayal of Vanessa was stellar in this season. I loved Queen Pin being at the top, running the business, taking charge, her running it better than Wilson Fisk ever did. That's my queen. That better be right. The biggest disappointment with Vanessa for me was the fact that I assumed they were doing the Vanessa putting Foggy in witness protection plot point from the comics. That's where I thought it was going. And so for Foggy to not revealed to be alive in this season, there's still hope for season 2. I think it's a waste of talent to keep Foggy dead and to not do the Vanessa witness protection plot point, which they were leading to. I mean, come on, they set it up perfectly. I also love Hector Ayala. Rest in peace. Truly, he was a phenomenal actor. It's so devastating that this was his final role to ever play. It's devastating that his character was shot and killed, and then the actor actually died before the release of Born Again. I am very happy that he did get to play this role and put this character out into the world, because absolutely touched my soul. Another aspect I loved of the show was the lawyering. The original Pre-overhaul, they were like, this is a lawyer drama. This isn't a superhero show. This is a lawyer drama. And that definitely shines through, but I like that a lot. I love Matt Murdock being Matt Murdock, which means him being a lawyer, him being in court, him arguing cases, him winning and losing. It's great. I love it. Seeing that side of the character is just as important as seeing the Daredevil side of the character, because one can't exist without the other. We've seen both, and we've seen Matt is in shambles when he's without one. I loved that he started a practice with Kirsten. I don't think it necessarily works, because Foggy being dead, just in my mind, if I were in charge of the show, I think Matt would have thrown himself off that roof. But ooh, that's another thing I loved. I loved Matt throwing Dex off the roof. The way he just shoved him out of the way like he was nothing, like he was trash. Shoved a man 5 stories down to his death. And of course he didn't die, but he intended to kill Dex. And Karen's reaction to that might be one of my favorite acting moments I've ever seen Deborah Ann Wool have. Knowing that either the body that just landed behind me is either Matt Murdock or it's either Benjamin Poindexter, and she wasn't sure which one was worse, because either way, Matt Murdock was ruined. Matt Murdock killing ruins Matt Murdock. Not ruins his character, but ruins him mentally. And we see that in the comics. But of course, then we had to watch Foggy die right after that, so not as good. I love the dedication to Matt Murdock having a girlfriend and still flirting with anything that has a pulse. Very in line with his character in the past. Matt Man-Whore Murdock absolutely would be flirting with the random girl in that one scene, and also, sure, why not Frank Castle? And also, yeah, Benjamin Poindexter. Because, yeah, he called him sweetheart and pulled his hair back. Yeah, that happened. One of the best scenes. If you can't tell, episode 8 is by far my favorite episode of the season. I've already watched it like 3 times. It is nearly perfect, but unfortunately they had to include that bald-headed man. Also, what is Cherry's name? Does anyone know? Because his first name isn't Cherry. It has to be his last name, or it's a nickname. I've just been calling him Cherry Cola. First name Cherry, last name Cola. Hey, it's Editing Eva, and I realized that I totally forgot to talk about, my microphone. One of my favorite parts of the Born Again series is their use of music. Oh my gosh, I loved it. The original show absolutely lacked music. It had so much to storytelling, in my opinion, and ending with the Radiohead song made my frickin' day. Oh my gosh, I loved it. So yeah, totally forgot to talk about this while I was filming, but 10 out of 10. Every single time they use music, especially at the end of episode 8, especially at the end of episode 9. Mwah. Perfect. Love. Just remember that this is just my opinion of the show, and you can have whatever opinion you want. It'd be weird if we had the exact same opinions. Feel free to leave them below. Just be respectful, I guess, because, again, This is just me. I don't speak for anyone but myself. Overall, I think I'd give the show a solid 7 out of 10. But like I said, I'd watch any show with Matt Murdock in it, so I knew I was going to at least enjoy it a pretty good amount. Was it perfect? By no means. Was it better than season 3? Nothing ever will be. Was it good, and will I watch it again? Yes. Yes, I will. I will definitely watch it again. Thank you for watching my first ever review of any TV show, which of course had to be Daredevil Born Again. Like and subscribe if you want to see me do a backflip. Thank you.